What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. Okay, so picking up with, I guess this is really like Dark Titans. This is the aftermath for the Lazarus contract as far as Deathstroke goes. I'm sure there'll be an epilogue for the Teen Titans and the Titans. I don't really know why there wouldn't be, but this is designed to kind of show us, the aftermath in terms of how Deathstroke views the world. Because remember, Lazarus contract was really big more for Deathstroke than anything else. It was really kind of like a Deathstroke story, more so than anything else. I mean, it involved the Titans, it involved the Teen Titans insofar as they played a significant role in trying to stop him. And again, the Lazarus contract was really more of kind of like a homage to the Judas contract, but this is cool because what it does is it allows DC to begin moving Deathstroke in a whole new direction. I mean, he really kind of maintains a sort of cloak and dagger, is he still a bad guy kind of thing, but that's really one of the things that comes out of character-based arcs. And again, that's really the big difference between Marvel and DC. Marvel does a lot of like crossover events, right, wrong, or otherwise. They're really known for doing huge crossover events. They have small events within their stories. That was all the rage with the X-Men after House of M, like, Divided We Stand and Manifest Destiny and Messiah Complex and Messiah War and Nation X and Necrotia and all those kind of things. Those were all like, character arcs that helped to sort of revitalize and revamp and shuffle up the standing of the X-Men, following the events of House of M. But with DC, it's really focused more on character arcs as opposed to crossovers. So a lot of the big storylines or big events, quote unquote, that we see are confined to like Batman comics, Superman comics, that sort of thing. It's a way to sort of keep the characters fresh and keep them going without doing these massive line-wide crossovers. Because remember, so far in DC Rebirth, the only big crossover events that we've had so far have been like Justice League versus Suicide Squad, Lazarus contract, and maybe one or two more. But for the most part, it's like the Bat Family crossover in terms of Night of the Monster Men. It's Superman Reborn, and that's the Superman comics, Superwoman, Supergirl, Action Comics, Superman, that kind of thing. So this is really kind of cool that we get this sort of continuation with regards to Deathstroke's character. And what we do here is we initially pick up with Dave Isherwood. Now remember, Dave Isherwood was the guy who developed the Icon suit, and that's the suit that's currently worn by Jericho, the son of Deathstroke. But back when we did our video on The Professional, the first story arc of DC Rebirth for Deathstroke's character, we had talked about how Isherwood was the lover of Jericho, the lover of Deathstroke's son, but was also a guy who was functioning as a superhero. Now, he had worked alongside Deathstroke, being, I guess, his tech guy, so to speak. But the problem with this is that it really sort of sets in motion the idea that Dave is going to become a villain of Deathstroke, in the sense that when he was knocked off the building, when Jericho was going to get married to Etienne, and basically professed this to Isherwood, saying, look, we are not going to be a thing anymore. I'm getting married with a woman. Isherwood intended to intervene. He intended to step in, and he intended to stop this marriage from happening. This resulted in Jericho basically using his powers to shut off the abilities of the Icon suit and presumably send Isherwood plummeting to his death, which is when Jericho, sort of trying to make up for his actions, stepped in and became the new Dr. Icon. But what this tells us is that following the instance of David Isherwood presumably having died, that what he received was a sort of knockoff of Deathstroke's DNA, sort of his regenerative healing factor that makes him everything that he is. So it's very much akin to the idea of like Deadpool, receiving the sort of regenerative healing factor of Wolverine. Now, the difference here is that Deadpool's regenerative healing factor is pretty significant in comparison to Wolverine's himself. But again, it really shows us how a lot of the organizations that exist in DC Comics serve the purpose of grabbing what's already been done and trying to copy it, in the same way that Dr. Abraham Erskine came up with a super soldier serum for Captain America and then died before he could duplicate it. There's been nothing but a litany of different organizations who have tried to duplicate it on their own, all of whom have been unsuccessful and developed their own variations of Captain America, Steve Rogers, if that's what we want to call them. And so the result is that following this, it's really one of these scenarios where the future, or really kind of like the way the world is viewed by Isherwood and Deathstroke, go hand in hand. And the reason why I say that is because switching over to Deathstroke proper, we pick up with a girl named Tanya. And the cool thing about this is that Tanya was a character who had a pretty significant role in the Twilight storyline. Now, the Twilight storyline in Deathstroke was one that we didn't really do because, in all honesty, it was 6 or 7 issues of us learning that Deathstroke was going blind. That was really about it. Now, I had really kind of banked on the idea, and I was sort of gambling with this, but I was gambling with the idea that Lazarus contract would allow a kind of reshuffling and revamping of the Deathstroke landscape and let us basically kind of jump into Deathstroke following the events of Lazarus contract as if it was brand new all over again. And in a lot of ways it does, and that's why I'm kind of glad that gamble paid off. But the idea here was that Tanya was sort of this new 52 iteration of Power Girl, kind of a new version of Power Girl. in the sense that Karen Starr was very much the power girl of Earth 2, you know, from the other reality, the golden age of superheroes. And for reasons that I do not believe have been fully fleshed out yet, Karen, alongside Huntress, had gone through a portal to get them to Earth 2. And in the process, Tanya's powers manifested, meaning she has super strength, durability. She can increase or decrease her size. So she's not an exact copy of the original Karen Starr Power Girl, but she's a close second. Now, again, this is probably something that's going to be fleshed out, assuming that, you know, I didn't miss anything. This is probably going to be something that's going to be fleshed out over the course of her comics. But in the Twilight storyline, what we ended up learning is that in addition to traveling to New York to try to become one of the Teen Titans, to try to, you know, become a superhero, what we also found out was that she was still just trying to make her way in the world. Now, eventually she came across the path of Deathstroke, and with Deathstroke basically being a guy that had gone blind, he'd essentially used Tanya for his own ends, in the sense that there really wasn't like a full-on relationship so much as he was like, hey, look, you're trying to be a superhero, I can guide you along this path. All you have to do are these few things, and so on and so forth, all of which basically was revealed to have been a ruse by Deathstroke for the purpose of him just kind of trying to, you know, regain his own abilities, regain his eyesight, that kind of a thing. And so again, she was very much used for this purpose. And so because of that, it's developed somewhat of a rift between the two. Now, this will actually sort of reveal itself as we end up going towards the end of the story. But at this point, we kind of shift over to the character of Joseph with the aftermath of this whole, you know, Lazarus Contract event. Because remember, Lazarus Contract also dealt with the idea, I guess the fallout from his character, in the sense that he had injured his sister Rose while he was just high on Oxycontin. He was just going through all these major problems with his own individual character, and he had sought out to kill his father, Deathstroke. Now, of course, that proved to be unsuccessful. He's tried his own sort of AA meetings, and at the end of the day, none of them really seemed to be paying off. And so with Deathstroke picking him up, you know, and the two of them kind of getting on a plane, what happens is there's sort of this kind of reconciliation between the two. Because remember, with Grant not being able to be saved by Deathstroke during the events of Lazarus Contract, he now only has one other son. Not only that, the whole Lazarus Contract event and being forced to realize that he cannot save Grant, and that Grant's death is a result of his own actions, in the sense that he was very much an absentee father. He was very neglectful. He didn't treat them as actual sons, really more as like apprentices, which set Grant on the road of hating Deathstroke, leading him to joining Hive, leading to his conflict with the Teen Titans that resulted in his heart, you know, basically failing and him dying in the first place. Deathstroke kind of has to sit down and look at his son, Joseph, and say, he's the only one I have left. He's the only son I have left, and treat him that way. You know, it's basically recognizing that he himself can continue down this path of self-destruction, or he can sort of turn over a new leaf. Now, the other half of this is that Jericho is reconciling with his father, saying, look, you had an opportunity to totally disrupt the entire space-time continuum by gaining the powers of the Flash, running back and forth, you know, with regards to the time stream. You could have caused some major, you know, ramifications. The fact that you didn't means, one, you recognize the significance of what it means to travel back and forth through time, and two, it really seems like you're trying to turn over a new leaf. Now, in the midst of this conversation, Deathstroke gets a call, which in turn is actually meant for Jericho, and we'll get to that here in a second. But jumping back over to the character of Tanya, what we end up finding out is that she is at an age now where she is engaging in the activities you would expect for a girl her age. But of course, she's basically, you know, prescribed birth control pills, and this really just kind of leads into a scenario where she goes to try to get this prescription filled, and when she's rejected, Deathstroke pops up and offers to basically play the role of her dad in order to get her prescription filled. Now, the reason why this matters is because, again, Deathstroke's trying to reconnect with Tanya. He's trying to reconnect with her so the two of them can go forward as part of a team that Deathstroke is forming. And the reason why is because this team is basically the Dark Titans. You know, I guess maybe kind of an antithesis to the Titans as they exist right now, in the same way that in Marvel Comics under, you know, Dark Reign, you had Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers, and then you had the Avengers. This seems to be very much the same way. And so he's, you know, really kind of gathered Jericho and Tanya and his daughter Rose and Wintergreen and all these different guys together for the purpose of creating his own superhero team. And so again, the last little tidbit here is this call that Deathstroke received that was meant for Jericho. And this call came from Dave Isherwood. And this call really seems to be like it's designed for the purpose of Dave saying, look, I understand I was at fault by trying to force you out of your marriage, but I am in a position now where I am going to carry on with fulfilling my life in the best way I can. And the best way for me to live my life is to take out Deathstroke. The best way for me to live my life is to become an enemy of Deathstroke, to try to bring him down and make him pay for all the things he's done over the course of my life. Now, again, this is a really, really cool moment by Priest. And the reason why is because Priest has a really, really weird method of storytelling. And one of the big issues that I've had with this storytelling in terms of just keeping up with the story is the fact that there is no linear measure of storytelling. Under normal circumstances, a writer will sit down and a writer will say, okay, I am writing this 6-part story about Superman. And so this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then we get all the way to the end. And it just follows a linear progression. You know, one event takes place after another. Keep it really simple. It's like we're going to tell a story about Superman. He wakes up, and then he takes a shower, and then he gets dressed, and then he goes to work. That's how they normally tell their stories. What Christopher Priest does is Christopher Priest says, okay, I'm going to tell a story about Superman. Superman got up, but when he got up, he thinks back to a time when he first became Superman, which deals with this whole storyline, and then he gets up and he gets dressed. But while he's getting dressed, he's also thinking about this one thing that happened 3 days ago, and then we're going to explore that. And it gets really confusing, and it gets really, really weird, and it bounces all over the place. But again, this is really just kind of sort of going into this whole notion of the fact that Deathstroke's past will never be able to escape him. And again, it's really kind of in the tail end of the story, Christopher Priest grabbing this guy that we presumably thought was dead and basically saying everything that Deathstroke's done, despite the fact that he's trying to turn over a new leaf, or at least it seems like he's trying to turn over a new leaf, at the end of the day, it's all going to come back. All these chickens are going to come home to roost, and there's probably going to be hell to pay, to be honest. We're not really sure. But again, this was just kind of a one-shot. It's really just an epilogue, you know, going into the events of the aftermath of Lazarus Contract, which, by the way, I gotta say, Deathstroke wearing like an all-white suit with white hair, he looks amazing. Like, I think he looks he looks really, really cool. It looks awesome. Like, if I saw a guy walking around like that, I would be like, that guy is obviously like a hitman or an assassin or someone not to be trifled with, you know, or just like a really rich guy. And Deathstroke's all of the above. So it's it really kind of works. It comes out looking pretty cool. But nonetheless, you know, I figured we'd go ahead and just kind of cover this and get this out there and make sure you guys are aware of what's going on with regards to Deathstroke. But in any event, if you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I am excited to see what happens next. I am excited to see what takes place. But yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.